I'm Gene Valentino, and I approve this message.
Trump won, but we know the real fight starts now. Congress needs a champion to move the MAGA agenda forward.
I'm Gene Valentino. Like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman and innovator. When I'm elected, I'll put you, the American people, first. We'll abolish federal income taxes. We'll slash the budget and eliminate whole government departments. We'll send every illegal immigrant packing. My message to DC is simple: lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Hello friends, I'm John Singley. We're in Inverarity Point, Escambia County, in the far reaches of western Florida in the Panhandle. We have a special guest this morning, Congressional candidate Gene Valentino, who's running for the seat vacated recently by the former congressman here, Matt Gaetz. Gene, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, John, for having me. Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you.
And we thank you for hosting us here in your beautiful home in Inverarity Point. And we'll get back to that in just a few minutes. But Gene, you appeared yesterday at a GOP forum over in Santa Rosa County. And a lot of the things people were asking you about, we found very interesting. And we wanted to follow up as soon as we could on some of this stuff.
Sure.
The question number one is, what makes Gene run?
There's a passion to serve. I'll share with you what I didn't have time to share yesterday in Navarre, and this is the longer story. The truth is, I was an 8-year-old boy when my Italian grandfather, an immigrant who came into this nation legally, John, ended up, he was about ready to pass away, but I was an 8-year-old kid at the time and I didn't know better. My dad took me into the hospital, and the long story short, this Italian immigrant was a World War I veteran. He could barely speak English. He couldn't read and write English, but he could barely speak it. He was one of our earlier day immigrants that came into the nation legally through Ellis Island. And he met my grandmother here in Waterbury, Connecticut, of all places. And I was a consequence of that marriage. And one of the things I learned from that man when I went into the hospital room that day, I didn't know he was dying. My father just, for some reason, took me in to see him. He looked over at me while I was not paying attention and said, "Hey, you serve your nation." And I said, yeah, okay. No, did you hear me? You serve your nation. Yeah, okay, Grandpa. You promise? I promise. That was 8 years of age. And through life, my father reminded me of that. 2 days after I had made that promise to my grandfather, he died. Now, Gene Valentino, my grandfather, who I was named after, was an individual who served in World War I. He was a veteran. He had the bayonet scar in the center of his arm with a bullet shot wound right above it. He is personally responsible for saving 14 lives in the trenches in Europe during the war. My grandfather was a true hero that came to America, like many did, legally. He was from Italy. He was leaving this Mussolini regime and this craziness going on in Europe at the time. He looked at America as that bright star on the hill, and to be anywhere in this world was to be in America, where liberty and freedom prevailed. And he reminded me of that over the years as I grew up as a young teenager and an adult. I didn't get to see him in his in my teenage life, but 8 to 10 years of age, that's when he had the influence primarily with me. From that point on, I was always reminded that, John, someday I needed to serve my country. I wanted to live up to the promise I made to my grandfather. I did so initially when we came to Pensacola, Florida 35 years ago. And I love this community. America's Western, as Vince Wibbs used to say, Western Gate to the Sunshine State, where thousands live the way millions wish they could. The saying I will revere forever, and as Vince's family does. And what it means is this is America's best secret. It's the crystal-like Caribbean bleach white sands on the beach, all the way to a comfort, a savoir-faire, a way of life that permeates through the region, that should not be blemished or tarnished. It's a way of life that really reflects Americana. And I am so proud that I became the county commissioner for 2 terms, John, 8 years, 2 terms. And we got a lot done during that time. And I felt that by serving my county, I was meeting up with the promise for my grandfather. But I felt like I didn't do the full job. So I decided that when this opening came out for the United States Congress, Matt Gaetz's vacancy, that I would step up and step into the pond with some 10 to 12 others that are running as well, and let the chips fall where they may. But in my mind, I'm doing not only my promise to my grandfather, but what I've enjoyed doing as a county commissioner for 8 years, 2 terms, and what I've experienced at the local level that I was able to do to serve the county and to serve the people directly. The politician will tell you what you want to hear. The leader will tell you what you need to know. And that's the magic in this constitutional republic. And I think is the reason why we've survived almost 250 years now. We are coming up on 250 years anniversary, a governance, the United States of America, a governance that has lasted longer than any other governance in the world. And we should be proud of that. We should revere that. We should be reminding students when they're learning history about it. We should create incentives and motivation and excitement and a tenacity of spirit. We should have this exuberance that takes a teenage kid coming through the high school rank, our Gen X, Y, and Z folks these days, and reinstill in them, get them thinking about how beautiful and lucky they are to be Americans. I'll tell you who thinks a lot of that notion. The millions that have illegally crossed the border, John, to enjoy the same privilege. The problem is they did it, as I said, illegally. They are illegal aliens that have violated the laws of the United States of America. And the people who are running this government have allowed it to happen as a way of destroying America from within. It's for that reason alone. There's a lot of reasons, but it's for that reason alone, John, that I support Donald Trump without equivocation, without any compromise. We've got to get behind Donald Trump because you, the people of the United States of America, said so. You voted him in. You endorse his policies and principles. I've been doing it for 8 years on my podcasts, on Newsmax, in my corporate world with my boards of directors. I've been doing it, and you're welcome to go to www.genevalentino.com. There you'll find my Newsmax interviews where I did it nationwide, and on my podcast where I interviewed Tom Homan, Rick Scott, Dinesh D'Souza, Lee Greenwood, and I can name Dr. McCullough on the vaccines, and many more have been guests on my podcast show, www.genevalentino.com. There you'll see where Valentino stands. And that's the principle of Donald Trump that what we supported, John, when it wasn't convenient to do so. I'm talking 8 years ago when Donald Trump was taking a lot of crap from a lot of people. He withstood the test of time, and he put it all on the line for America. And I'm coming out of the corporate world, and going back into politics to do the same for Donald Trump and America.
Now, Gene, as you mentioned before, I think there are any number, 10 or so qualified candidates that will be in this primary for the Republican nomination. Donald Trump has said that he supports his state CFO and our fellow panhandler, Jimmy Patronis from over in Panama City, as his preferred candidate for this District 1 seat. Do you feel, with your loyalty to President-elect Trump, that are you conflicted by your candidacy, given that Patronis is the guy?
Not at all. I've heard that a few times. Yeah. And nor are the other 7 or 8 or 9 who are running for the same seat. The people will decide who the next congressman is for this district, not a politician or not an inside deal. This congressional district seat is not to be played as a political pawn in a swap meet to garner favoritisms for politicians who think they are owned something. This is democracy the last time I looked, John, and everybody's entitled. You don't have to vote for me because you like me. You have to vote for me because you believe in the principle. Here's what I do know. Jimmy Patronis, CFO of the state of Florida, appointed by Rick Scott. That doesn't make Rick Scott a bad person either. Appointed by Rick Scott when Rick Scott was governor. Jimmy Patronis has left his post, sir. He has abandoned his station. He has walked away from the single most important crisis in Florida, the insurance crisis, which I did not, sir, have a chance to get into at this forum with 10 people limited to 2 minutes each yesterday.
You mentioned that there is a role for the federal government, the members of Congress, to play in insurance regulation in the state of Florida. Talk about that.
Well, first, Jimmy Patronis needs to get back to his position and tear up his resignation, John. The resignation he gave DeSantis to run for a congressional seat in a district he doesn't even live in. I'm here for several terms, for 35 years and 2 terms in office, working for the people in the district. Before I came to Florida, I was an instructor of the insurance licensing course at the state of Connecticut. I helped rookies pass the insurance license exam, which is very complicated and encumbering. It's very involved. It's not an easy industry because there's a lot of stuff that'll make you fall asleep real quickly. One of the terms is called statutory reserve. Another term we use in the insurance business is adverse selection. The popular term that more people know and understand is called the law of large numbers. I'll take a moment to discuss that here because we could not discuss it yesterday. Jimmy Patronis needs to work with the congressman that knows about the McCarran-Ferguson Act. For the folks in Florida who've been through some serious storms that have paid insurance, they've witnessed a $300-400 a year premium go up to $3,000 to $5,000 if the company didn't cancel you. And why is that so? It's because the pool of people paying the premiums were people paying premiums just from the state of Florida. The law of large numbers did not prevail, as it's supposed to in the insurance business. Quick comparison, the flood policy. The national flood insurance policy has a pool of premium payers from the entire nation. During Hurricane Ivan, 2004, if you were paying, let's say, $700 a year for an insurance premium on your home, if the insurance company didn't cancel you, your rate went up 700 to 800%. Fact. But your flood policy might have gone up 4 to 6%. How come? Because the pool, my claim on my flood policy was not as impactful as because it was a nationwide pool, as compared against the Florida pool of premium payers. So the insurance companies are saying, I got to get the heck out of Florida. This is nowhere I want to do business. So instead of reversing McCarran-Ferguson, the state legislators are saying, okay, we'll figure out something. What could we do? Let's form the Citizens Insurance, and let's have a windstorm policy. We'll take windstorm off your backs, insurance companies, and we, the state of Florida, through a quasi-insurance company, create a policy that pays for windstorm. Controlled by Jimmy Patronis and an insurance commission under the governor of the state of Florida. They've abandoned their post by not reaching out to the federal government to do what the flood policy did. The flood policy is called the National Flood Insurance Program. And that flood insurance program will have a different rate based on whether you're in the hills of Montana versus the shoreline of Biloxi. And each area has a different rating scheme. That's fair, but it's nationwide in the flood program. So while the premiums may differ a little from region to region, it's not 700-800% different in Florida from Connecticut, let's say. So these differences need to be neutralized. So California might say, hey, wait a minute. I don't want to be part of a national scheme that makes me responsible for Florida's hurricanes. Well, wait a minute, California. If I'm to take that attitude, maybe I don't want to be part of your mudslides and forest fires. Or how about the flooding going along the Mississippi, going into the upper Rockies, originating up in the Rockies? We have different perils and risks or hazards that we're exposed to based on where we are in the nation. And so if we are one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all of us, we need to realize that, maybe Iowa didn't have a border either, but they sure found out they were a border state when we didn't worry about Texas the way we should have. And the same now applies to Claudia Tenney and some of the others up and the upper border of New York State. The border crisis up there is just as bad as the border crisis down in Texas. So what does that have to do with flood? If we come together as one nation and unify our forces, we need to support it. Here's what I know. The savings will be geometric for each and every person paying insurance if we nationalize our underwriting criteria and our pooling of premiums for insurance companies. I'm against Obamacare. There's other factors in Obamacare that stink, that make it wrong. That has to do with government intervention. Obama said it himself, you'll get to pick your own doctor. Did you? You did not. They cut you back on that issue as well. So we have issues within the underwriting criteria and the methodology, which are different from the pooling criteria of how we get money into a pool to protect you for the claim. So you don't have to then get encumbered with lawsuits, claims adjusters, and what's called concurrency of coverage. Where does the flood policy end? Where does the main homeowner's policy begin? Where does the flood policy end? Where does the windstorm policy of the state of Florida begin? It has to do with what's called where one leaves off and the other begins, the concurrency of coverage. I taught these courses in the insurance department in the licensing process up in Connecticut years ago. I propose a plan. The solution is the revocation of or the modification of the McCarran-Ferguson Act that goes back, I think, about 60 years, that pushed insurance down to the different states to manage at the state level. It took the burden off the federal government, but it created isolated pockets of financial incapacity at the state levels to manage the crisis when the crisis occurred.
Gene, the military presence, particularly in District 1, Congressional District 1, is a huge economic driver.
Oh, boy.
Which congressional committees, if you were elected, would be of great interest to you? If Speaker Johnson said, Gene, fill out a dream list here of committees you'd like to serve on.
Oh, I'd love intelligence at the top of the list. I would have no greater joy than to be working for Tulsi Gabbard, who's now hopefully appointed as head of intelligence, and the 14 or so sub-intelligence agencies that will come under her jurisdiction. That to me is at the top of the list. Defense, and believe it or not, SBA and FAA and FCC. As a pilot, I have a hankering for watching the new generation of pilots come forward under a new culture of aviation, because there's a new technology that makes our plane right out here in the hangar next to our man cave a part of a new generation of flying. We can talk about that later. I like the FCC because I think the concept of free speech has to fall fairly and equitably, not only to the old-fashioned radio and TV stations, but to the whole new generation of streaming services, web-based broadcast. We need to make sure that the right to free speech remains absolutely protected as our First Amendment mandates. But we need to take a hard look at New York Times versus Sullivan, 1968, where we imposed a serious restriction on public figures and elected figures that said, if you say bad things about an elected official, hey, John, how come you beat your wife 3 times a week? That's not fair. If you're a private citizen, and you are, and that got out, you could sue me, because we both know it's not true, by the way. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm an elected official and you take the liberty of saying adverse things about me because I am an elected official, the only claim or a way to do it is to prove malice. Well, how do I prove, because I've got my secret sources, how do I prove that it was malice if you claim you have secret sources? We've got to get away from the hurtful behavior of the use of free speech. We've got to make sure speech is responsible. I'm interested in going after people on a more severe level, like John Brennan, head of the CIA, James Clapper, NIS, I think it was, or vice versa. These 2 gentlemen conspired and got 51 intelligence-related officers of the United States bureaucracy to sign a document saying that the Hunter computer laptop was bogus, was Russian collusion. It was not. It was factual. And to Matt Gaetz's credit, who preceded me, he was bringing forward to the Intelligence Committee information that showed he had evidence in his hand that the FBI denied existed of Hunter Biden's laptop. And the evidence on that was so damning, the FBI did not want to talk about it. That is an abuse of the media to hide and not publicly disclose the wrongdoing, to help promote a candidate, political interference by government with the open election process is a crime unto itself through the misuse of free speech. We've got to take responsibility for our wrongdoings, and that's what this deep state cleaning the swamp, draining the swamp is all about, that I totally support, that Donald Trump is espousing.
Gene, one of the questions at the Navarre Forum yesterday also caught my attention, because I think it's a little bit of a tricky policy question. So the incoming administration, one of their principles was drill, baby, drill. independence, energy independence. The Congress has carved out some exceptions in the Gulf of Mexico based upon the need for Eglin Air Force Base, Tyndall Air Force Base, NAS Pensacola to train aerial combat, weapons tactics unimpeded over the Gulf of Mexico. And so drilling has never been permitted in Florida off the coast, even though it's permitted next door in Baldwin County. What would be your position on energy independence and the Florida Gulf Coast exemption?
If we had no other source of oil, I would say drill, baby, drill in the Gulf. But we do, John. We have the Keystone Pipeline, Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We're going to reactivate these other external sources that Donald Trump was underway with, that would have provided more oil and gas than which would obfuscate the need to have to go into the Gulf of Mexico. My position is we do not drill in the Gulf of Mexico because there's more reliable sources elsewhere to enjoy more cost effectively first. And I think the real issue is to take that initiative, which is a great point you made, because we don't need soldiers on the ground fighting wars we don't clearly understand. We need economic missiles that go after bad behavior in foreign countries, starting with Iran, to neutralize, to neuter their ability to support the Houthis, the Hezbollah, and the Hamas. These foreign forces that went after Israel can be handled through economic sanctions, and we have to get our oil back first to do that, not give it away to foreign. Buying oil from Venezuela and Russia and so forth is obscene. Why we've given dollars to our enemy to support our enemies when we could be fighting a war with oil, with our own drill baby drill policy first. And I'm glad Donald Trump's bringing that back.
Gene, some of these asymmetric tools that have been developed in warfare include the ability of using cyberspace to neutralize adversaries. Pensacola, Okaloosa County, we pride ourselves on being sort of a hotbed of cyber training for the military. Corey Station over here trains all of the Navy's cyber warriors. As a congressman, what could you do to leverage that capability in the 1st Congressional District?
Well, we don't need to maintain it. We need to grow it. So the answer to your question has a few different answers to it. On the infrastructure side, we've got some dilapidated buildings, John. They need to be retrofitted and brought up to speed so the new rookie, the new ensign, the new person coming in to enlist feels excited about his surroundings and where he's going to be working and training and growing as a leader, a future leader for this nation. That's on the infrastructure side. We need to make sure that all dollars being spent in the military are spent to grow it regionally. We have about 8 actual installations, not all. Well, if we start over in Tyndall Air Force Base, that's technically in the next congressional district. But I would work hand in glove with my neighboring congressmen to make sure that the whole Gulf Coast is growing in a strategic way through the Department of Defense. In fact, that's one of the committees I'd like to get on for that reason, not to mention the veterans. But the other part of that is the growing of the military again. The very veteran who's waiting in a soup line, who's sitting in a tent city, who's impoverished and has been scorned upon, reminds me of my anger I have to the way we treated our Vietnam vet from the days of the 70s that you and I remember. When we saw Vietnam vets coming home spat upon by the Jane Fonda crowd that thought they were that they were some sort of alien to America. These poor guys gave their lives and their limbs and came back mentally scarred for what they saw firsthand, only to be poorly greeted when they came through the airports. That isn't going to happen under my watch. We're going to have a plan in place that motivates those same hurt individuals. The best asset for the United States military is the veteran. And the Veterans Administration needs a plan in place to bolster the new generation of military leaders. We need them to speak firsthand to the generation below them about why they're so proud to have served. Frank Silla, Tunnels for Towers, is a perfect example of a cause that's out there. But why does that have to be a volunteer public institution that we contribute to? Why isn't the government? You want the government to spend some money? They should be spending it on people, the veterans, that get the attention first, not wait in line at a VA clinic for 6 hours to be treated by an overworked doctor who's been working 12 hours. We need that poor veteran to be ahead in line. And in parallel, next door, you've got illegal immigrants getting paid checks with credit cards and cell phones. What are we doing? Are we putting illegal people ahead? Are you saying we're putting illegal people ahead of our veterans? Full stop. Fix that alone. We got to fix that alone. That is a military priority of mine right here in the Panhandle of Florida, where we have eight true establishments of military bases and trillions of dollars of assets that need to be protected and secured. When I hear about base realignments, the BRAC initiatives, John, I'm scared to death. If we've got the installations and the talent that we have, we need to get more assets into this panhandle, not fewer, to protect this nation. And that's why we should also not consider drilling in the Gulf, in the panhandle, because our military there's limitations nationwide of where the poor guys can train these days. We need to have that Gulf protected right now.
Gene, you're on the campaign trail. You got a short amount of time here until the primary election, and you've been very gracious to sit down with us this morning. But in great respect to your schedule here, I want to ask you a favor.
Yes, sir.
I have heard so many people talk about Gene Valentino, who always start or end the conversation with, "Have you seen Gene's airplane in his garage at home?" Gene,
you want to go take a look?
I do. Our audience would love to see what an airplane in your home garage looks like.
Right here's the Man Cave. So welcome to the Man Cave. This is where we do our podcasts. This is where we do our Newsmax interviews. This is where the guests come and stay overnight. Let's go down 20 feet away to the hangar and take a look at a little toy I've got.
Lead the way, sir.
Okay. Come on. Come join us.
So, this is the second floor of the garage, it appears.
This is the mezzanine area of the hangar for the Icon A5, which sits right here below us. It sits within literally a bunker of 25 tons of steel, U.S. steel, by the way. When the contractor came in, I made sure they used U.S. steel, no foreign steel. And we have a special kind of concrete that has a chemical in the concrete called Zypex that actually prevents cracking, like a blood clot would cure a cut to your skin. The floor is a few coats of a high-grade epoxy gloss finish. You can eat off that floor. And over to the far side is my flight planning region where I plan my flights for for my wife and I to take.
Can we go down and take an up close and personal look at the airplane?
Sure, let's go down.
And you fly this plane, I'm told.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we also fly it. I've been a guest at the Blue Angels Air Show a few times as a civilian pilot.
Wow, look at this, an elevator in your garage.
Well, elevator in the hangar.
A hangar, right?
Elevator between the hangar and the man cave, actually. This is our fun stop.
Well, this is just, you know, as a guy who spent a lot of years in aviation, in the military, in the Navy in particular, this is just almost mind-boggling. Now, this is a little airplane, light sport, it says.
Well, the light sport category was an initial category to help with the FAA's determination of the light sport aircraft, experimental aircraft. This aircraft was experimental originally. This is called the Icon A5, built in Vacaville, California. There's about 400 of these aircraft out right now. It's a two-seater. And you can see the C-wing here. This is like a surfboard or a C-wing or sponson. And this is the canopy. And inside is the aircraft. This is the
Gene, so two people can ride here. How fast can you go? I mean, if you got calm winds and nothing impeding your flight?
Yeah, this is a VFR aircraft, and it's meant for slower speed, so it's generally under 110 knots, about maybe 115, 120 miles an hour on a good day. But it's usually
piston engine, I would imagine this is what this is.
It's run by a Rotax engine, 100 horsepower, and one of the real neat things is that go ahead and from behind, as you look from behind the aircraft forward over here on this side, watch your step. You'll see something funky. This is the ballistic parachute. So from within the aircraft, if I pull a certain lever, I'm launching a ballistic blast that goes up about 30, 40 feet, and the canopy opens. I have my own parachute. I hope I never use it. I'm trained.
Yeah, right.
I'm trained to use it, but I don't want to use it, if you know what I mean.
I was up in Vancouver, Canada last summer, and a friend of mine has one of these parachute airplanes. Took me for a flight up into the Rockies.
Oh, it's good.
Canadian Rockies up through there. Yeah. Amazing stuff. But
it's amphibious. You can see the wheels, but the wheels come up. They retract into this little recessed cavern there, and the whole belly of the plane becomes a jet ski.
Wow. And so right here, you've got, there is Perdido Bay. Is that what this is back here?
This is Perdido Bay, yeah. In fact, to the right is all of Florida. To the left is all of Alabama.
And so the airplane just taxis its way into the water, down the ramp over here.
Yeah.
And I see you've got marker buoys out there. Red right returning, as I remember. And wow, you got a windsock. You got a whole weather station out there. Gene, this is amazing. Again, I've heard about this. You know, people don't talk about you without bringing up the airplane in the hangar.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah. So,
well, this is a residential neighborhood, so you never. It certainly doesn't look like an airport, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we have a ramp, like other people have docks and ramps next to us. So we put in a ramp right here legally with the Army Corps of Engineers and DEP, and we have the Weather Underground device sitting out there next to the windsock, and that transmits data back into the hangar, which is where I then know my specific data for takeoff.
So you're your own air traffic control, you're your own weather advisor. You got it all going down here.
We gotta know the weather conditions before we fly. That's for sure.
Not
and we
today.
gotta know. We gotta know
low
the
ceiling today.
And we gotta know the issues before we go to Congress, and that's the corollary.
Gene Valentino, candidate for Congressional District 1, has been a gracious host, not only in his parts of his home up here, but also into his little hangar down here on Perdido Bay. Gene, thanks. So what's on the screen? What is this over here? You've got a...
This is where I put up my flight plan. This is where we actually prepare our flight plan. The pre-flight planning goes on here. This green here's our home, and it's blocking the, this is ForeFlight, a very popular flight planning software. And this dark green, yellow, and red, orange here has to do with this bad weather we have outside right now. And
here's a picture of the plane in the water.
That's the floating dock next to the ramp.
Yeah.
Yep. We welcome to paradise.
Why would you want to go to Washington, D.C., serve in Congress, and leave all this behind?
Why not do both? Why not do both? Why not be a good servant to the citizens, which helps me fulfill my promise to my grandfather, and at the same time still have some fun?
Folks, thanks for joining with us. It's been a great conversation with congressional candidate Gene Valentino and fellow Escambia County resident out here at Inner Point. Gene, we really appreciate, on behalf of the audience, your hospitality and your willingness to jump into the arena, as they say. And until then, all the best, and we'll be following your progress and hopefully success.
We're at the ready. We're ready to serve.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.